Thank you all. My name's Scott Gibson. Let me see, let's get this. And I work for an MPO, our Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County. Our cities, that's in Reno. Reno and Sparks and Washoe County are our three member agencies. And I'm responsible for the pavement preservation program for the regional level roads. I'm a really lucky guy in that nobody asked me to do equivalent uniform annual costs on my pavements. And I also don't own any of the roads, but I manage a tax increment. Our community, not once but twice, voted through an initiative to index their fuel taxes to inflation. And in 2002, we did it to the producer price index, which didn't keep up with construction inflation to the early 2000s. And in 2008, we did it to the producer price index, which more closely tracks construction costs. And so I'm also very lucky in that we're a well-funded agency and we have enough money to do things that we want with, and it's given us an enormous benefit and payback, as I'll try and show here. I kind of want to show some of the research and evaluation that we do of our system and our network. We've been, our three agencies have been running pavement management systems for since the early 80s and collecting very good, robust data, and have had, most of them have run very robust pavement preservation programs, particularly Washoe County. Just real quick here, a little quick primer on pavement engineering. Is there a mouse that goes with, let's see if I can touch this. There we go. So this is your pavement performance curve, and this is what preventive maintenance, pavement preservation is supposed to do. Is supposed to move that curve out. This area between the purple line and the red line is generally what's referred to as the benefit that you get from doing pavement preservation, the area of that curve versus the area under the other curve. That's what it looks like in theory. This is what it looks like in real life. As I talked about, our county pavement engineer, he was a typical anal retentive engineer, and he started doing micropaver stuff in the early 90s and got way into it, and since then he's been on all the user groups and he gets the beta versions and gets to break them and that kind of stuff. So when he got that, the roads in our area were in really bad shape. We had gone through a period of tough budget times and it deferred maintenance, and then we had some very bad winters in a row. It was very damaging to the roadways. And it took a long time to dig our way out of that stuff, and it kind of brought the importance of maintenance to our community, which is why we kind of get support for that stuff. But anyhow, back in those days, Greg had, he developed a family of curves for his particular routes. This is how he didn't use the default curves in the system. He got curves that showed how our agency's roads, how his agency's roads performed. And in 1993, this is how an arterial road performed. And so in the 2000s, we took over the maintenance of the regional Washoe County roads, which are the higher volume collectors and arterials. And so back in 1993, a typical road to get to a PCI of 50, which is typically the threshold for poor, would take about 9 years. And so he kept going along, and he was very aggressive at doing pavement preservation stuff. We had Intermountain Slurry Seal, had an office there. He started doing slurry seals and microsurfacing and chip seals on all of his roads and got very aggressive about it. And so I could talk about this slide for like an hour. There's so many things that are implied here. But I took over the system, and at about 2012, I'm going, Greg, he insisted when we collaborate, all of the agencies came together and we started managing that index tax increment, and we all had to come to an agreement on, you know, what roads and treatments would be used and the agencies would allow us to do. And one of the things that Greg insisted on is that we used the Washoe County performance curves, because he built those, and by God, those were the accurate ones. So we started using them for a few years, and after a while I said, you know, Greg, your curves say the road out in front of our office should be a PCI of about 48, and there's not a crack in that road. And so he went back and he said, yeah, really? And he looked at it. And so in 2012, a Washoe County arterial road, after 20 years of good preventive maintenance, now lasted about 18 years to get to that threshold of poor. So he doubled the performance life of his network by doing good, aggressive preventive maintenance. Now this is also, he's using these curves to get budget. So he goes to the county commission and say, I need $10 million to do the roads this year. And so about 2012 or so, the county commission goes, nope, you can only have like, $3 million. Well, he actually only needed 5 because he's been doing good pavement preservation. And so his curve's moving out, he's getting more benefit. And so he was actually adequately funding and getting enough money for his roadways as well. So that's kind of anecdotal. So we started doing, again, in our area, we have there's $3 billion of just pavement on the ground. So if you can double the life of your network by doing these good practices, Larry was talking about big preservation. That is big preservation. And so the other thing that I'm fortunate with is that we have the Western Region Supervisory Center is at the University of Nevada, Reno, and I have a research budget of $150,000 over 2 years that I get to use with those guys to come look at stuff. And the Montana materials engineer who was here before, Matt, was talking about knowing whether or not a chip seal right after construction is an effective thing or not. And we kind of went through that process. NCHRP had a study that was done on developing the optimal timing for the application of preventive maintenance treatments. And so I had UNR kind of go through that process with us, and they used our micropaver data, which we had an extensive set of. And one of the things that they found out is that this is if you do one slurry seal, and slurry seals, this is all on slurry seal data. We hadn't, microsurfacing is now our standard tool, but it's not built into this data. But here's the do nothing curve, and then here is you do the first slurry seal, and if you take that down, you get some increase in benefit over the life of that road. But when you get down to a terminal serviceability of say 40, you don't get a lot of life extension out of that. But one of the things that they found out is that when you do the second slurry seal, when you get on that program, when you come back at 7 years later and do that second one, that's when you really start to get the benefit and really start to move the performance life of that roadway out. And here we're showing 25%, but we're getting on the 3rd and 4th cycles in some of our things. So having that regular system of preventive maintenance is where you really start to get effectiveness. And this models the effectiveness, the benefit that we are shooting for in our system. This B here, this is what we do, is we put our first treatment down at 3 years after construction, and then we start on a 7-year cycle after that. And that's pretty close to 50% increase in benefit over just building a road and letting it sit out there. Again, that's an enormous increase over the performance life of that roadway. And this is another cool slide, cool set of data that came out of that optimal timing. We started looking at 13 years of data. So when is the best time to put that first surface treatment down? And we started looking at, and this is benefit, this is the ratio of that, the yellow part of that curve to the blue part of the curve. And if you do it at year 0, you get about maybe 5 or 10%. And Matt earlier was talking about how that data showed that there was a 5% benefit to chip sealing their roadways earlier. But we found if you come out here, there's this huge spike at like year 3. Between year 3 and 4, there's an enormous benefit. The blue line here is arterials. The green line's residential. I don't know why the collectors didn't show up as much. But and this speaks to the mechanics of what pavement preservation treatments are doing for your roadway. We talk about, sealing the pavement, reducing the aging, reducing the oxidation, but what does that actually mean? When that asphalt binder is hardening, when you're talking about aging, it's losing its ability to stick to the rocks and stick the rocks to each other. It's the glue processes of that. There's an age hardening process that happens. So about year 3, you put that thing down and it starts aging and oxidizing and getting harder and stiffer and actually stronger. And what a surface treatment does is slow down that process. So it retards the aging process of the roadways. This is my explanation of what this is. And so if you do it at year 3, you're actually putting that slurry on a structurally stronger section of asphalt than you were if you did it immediately afterwards. So anyhow, it would be Montana's benefit to take a look at that process and see if you can find out, because again, we're talking 40% benefit over the life of the roadway if you do that timing at the right thing. Remember, Peter Sabali said, well, there may be some age hardening effects. And I'm just going, whoa, I mean, they're huge. So again, another really big benefit if you can find that stuff. And then, again, these guys talk wonderfully about the cost effectiveness, lane mile years, and things like that. Our tools primarily in our community are microsurfacing, and we do a lot of, our counties do chip seals and cape seals and that kind of stuff. And again, I'd throw numbers up and we talk about magnitudes, but these are kind of the typical costs in our agencies. And you can barely see the costs of these surface treatments and what they do for the roadways and then the benefit that they provide. We had one section of South Virginia Avenue, which was about 3 miles long, 5 miles, major roadway. It had it had been turned. It was an NDOT road that was turned over to our city, and it had an open graded surface course that was raveling off, and so it was incredibly rough. Had about an inch of profile that needed to be fixed, and we fixed it with a double microsurfacing that was done at night over a week on this high trafficked area, which cost about $350,000. It would have cost $4 or $5 million, maybe 6 or 7 with the ADA improvements that would have been required if we'd have done it another way. And so when you talk about cost effectiveness, the magnitude of these are, again, in order of magnitude. It's like 10 times more expensive. So an overlay would have had to last 50, 60 years to match the cost effectiveness of those cheaper slurry seal treatments. The other interesting paradox on these things, if you have a preservation budget, you should never be under budget. If you're not spending all of your preservation dollars, you're not doing your job well. And if you're doing it right, your budget needs should increase on your pavement maintenance, pavement preservation side, because you've got more good roads to keep good as you get going. I throw this up just because it's really quick research that we've had UNR looking at cape seals, and there's microsurfacing top cape seals and slurry seal top cape seals. And the microsurfacing stuff starts out in a range of a big range of pavement condition. You put the cape seal on, goes to 0, and they deteriorate at a very narrow rate. For slurry seal types, even if you start out with roads in better condition, the deterioration is broadens out over. So effectiveness of cape seals is very. We're finding some interesting things on the microsurfacing capped cape seal side. This is the condition of the network that we have now over 8 years. Almost all of my roads are in good condition. These are all of the roads in the region, including the local roads. One of our goals is to have no more of a PCI than 70 for the whole region, so we're well above that. And then we have no less than 5% in poor condition at the year 2020, so we've got a little bit of work to do on that. But in terms of the network that I'm responsible for and that tax increment takes care of, we're in very good shape. And just on the side of that, this is a bus, which doesn't have a lot to do with pavements, and this is a Burning Man sculpture that says "Believe" in front of this bus. But we had there's a corridor, the old US Highway 40, that goes from, it used to be the main highway through our community, the Lincoln Highway, that goes from Sparks to Reno. And we had this project to join our two downtowns together with a bus rapid transit project, and this also includes Virginia Avenue as well. But because of that system equity, because our pavement preservation system is in such good shape, we were able to defer pavement preservation for 2 years and put all of that money into this corridor. We committed $30 million, which was essentially our pavement preservation program. And with that, we were able to land a Tiger grant for an additional $20 million and a New Starts bus program for an additional $28 million. And so in my agency, they love their pavement preservation folks because we take things, we give them the equity that they can take funds to match stuff, to leverage the money that we have in our community through that index tax increment. And we're going to fix this whole corridor. We're going to fix the pavement, wider sidewalks, bike lanes for Larry when he comes to rent a bike through our bike share system, and to actually fix this whole thing and dramatically improve and connect with the bus rapid transit those two town centers. And that happens because we have a good, robust pavement preservation system. So anyhow, there's a lot of, if you do this stuff well, it takes you a lot more places than just having pavements in good condition. So thanks. Happy to take any questions.